Hello, everyone. It's Transformation Thursdays, and we have a very special guest here with us. It's Dr. Ramkumar. Now, I consider him to be the prana and the life force behind Punarnava Ayurveda. And Doc, thank you so much for gracing us here with your presence and sharing all your knowledge and wisdom with us.
Well, to begin with, I like the name of your program, Transformation Thursday, because as you know, Thursday is the day of the Guru or the teacher. And coincidentally, tomorrow is Guru Purnima, or again, the full moon dedicated to the teacher. And as we all know, it is the teacher who is primarily responsible for bringing about a transformation in all of us. It can happen in different ways. It can happen through different teachers. The scriptures even refer to the earth, the moon, the sun, the stars, the animals, all as teachers. And there is always a learning from any source. And transformation can happen at any point if we are open to that learning process. So, coming back to your question, may I ask you to repeat it because I have forgotten?
Well, firstly, thank you for sharing that piece of wisdom with us. I, was not aware that tomorrow is going to be Guru Purnima. So this almost seems, I'd like to use the word serendipity that we are talking about this today. And my question really was, what is it that made you so passionate and delve into Ayurveda in so much detail? And today sit here with us and be able to share that wisdom with us.
Well, there are some questions to which there are no answers. It just happens to us. I came into Ayurveda by accident, and for much of my Ayurveda schooling, I was not immensely impressed by Ayurveda. But then over the years, as I got to read a little more, study a little more, and experience a little more, it began to become very clear that Ayurveda is the easy way to a good life, to a content life, to a healthy life, to a happy life. Again, we should look at what the scriptures say. If you go into the Bhagavad Gita, it gives us two paths. One is called the path of Shreyas, and the other is called the path of Preyas. Shreyas is the path to the greater good, which is more long term. And Preyas is the path to the immediately pleasant, which is more short term. And we always have a choice whether we want to seek short term happiness, which may be compromising our long term well being, or whether we want to pursue our long term well being, which may in the short term be a little challenging. Or sometimes we can even say it be a little boring because it might be repetitive, it might be about practices and routines. So anyway, when we are given these two choices, many of us tend to go for the short term because the common phrase that
we're in the Insta world, we want Insta gratification.
We want everything immediately.
Prescription do, dawa lo, or boom.
Exactly.
But Doc, tell me something. COVID-19. I mean, I'm sure your phone has been buzzing away since this pandemic broke out. If you had to put COVID-19 in context to all this that you've said right now, which is learning from nature, learning from our environment, also having the approach to this, the choices that we are making, can you put this whole thing in context to what are our choices in this current situation that we are in right now?
Well, we again have the choice to choose for the long-term good. We need to recognize first that the current situation is a creation of every one of us on this planet. In some way, we have contributed to it. And the Ayurveda texts very clearly talk about that adharma, or wrong action, wrong conduct, unrighteousness. The cumulative effect of that adharma is what leads to a correction on a larger plane, which is what the pandemic is now being referred to. Having said that, I don't believe there is a reason to become fearful or to become scared. If we can again get back to the basics of eating right or eating well, sleeping right, exercising right, everything in the right quantity at the right time on a regular basis, and breathing well, again, very important. Many of us, we almost stop breathing when we are fearful. Just going back to basics, drinking hot water, whatever small things that, we were told many years back, that alone should suffice to build our resilience. And when we are strong, more often than not, even if we turn out to be COVID positive, it should not really harm us. We would be asymptomatic. But then there is again the other factor called karma, which is a completely different story, and over which many of us don't have any control.
Doc, just before this interview, I met someone who's recently recovered from coronavirus. And I asked him, what was it like? And he was like, it's so mental. It's so mental as opposed to physical that I wanted to discuss that with you, because while he said that, I also remembered a quote of Deepak Chopra, which he spoke in context to Ayurveda. And if I can find it, I would actually like to read it out here, where he said that Ayurveda is about the mind-body connectedness, the interconnectedness of mind and body. And nothing has more power to heal and transform the body than the mind. And I'm very curious about this, and I really want you to expand on this connectivity, this interconnectedness between mind, body, and environment.
Absolutely. The very first verse in one of the classical Ayurveda texts written by a teacher called Vagbhata starts with Ragadi Roga. Ragadi Roga in Sanskrit, which literally means diseases like desire, grief, anger, fear, guilt, anxiety, etc. The text has been written to work with diseases like what I just told, and then moving on to the diseases of the body. So Ayurveda has given great importance to the mind and recognizes that a strong mind, a steady mind, a determined mind, a mind full of conviction can play a huge role in the healing process at the physical level. I mean, you have somebody closer at home who epitomizes that, where the mind over matter work very well. And
he's talking about my mother.
Many people.
He's talking about my mother, Poonam Serene, in case you're watching. That's a ode to you, and hopefully I'll get her on the show also one of these days. But
Right.
Coming back to what you were saying, mind over matter.
Yes. So if we actually work consciously with the mind, and I think that many of us don't know that yoga primarily works with the mind. Today it has become so physical that we forget the impact of yoga on the mind, on restoring the balance in the mind, helping us to recognize that life is a journey. On the road, we will have multiple obstacles, we will fall multiple times, but if the mind is strong, we will pick ourselves up each time and continue on with the journey. This is what Ayurveda is, and this is what yoga is all about.
But Doc, the big question, is how? how do you make the mind stronger? How do you make the mind more resilient? There's concept, theory, and then there's practice. And practice mein hum maar kha jate hain.
So that is why practice is abhyasa. Abhyasa is repetition, repeated practice. In Ayurveda, the word is achara, again repeated practice. There has to be a
What is the
rhythm.
repeated practice, Doc? Like, there's so much negativity around. You put on the TV today, it's the news, what's happening in the borders, with global news coming in, with the pandemic, and also other environmental situations and issues that we're dealing with. Earthquakes, wildfires, we've just had a locust attack, we just had an earthquake in Delhi. There's just, and I'm sure there are many more, but like, there's a lot of stress and anxiety that's building up. So how can we use this time that we have right now to build that power of the mind?
So what you described are the distractions. And distractions will come into our life every day. But if we build our life around a rhythm, around a practice, where most of the day we are set in our practices, it can be very boring sometimes, it can be very repetitive, very difficult. But if we are rooted in the practices, and preferably if we have a group around us or a teacher who can guide us through the practices in relation to the food, the exercise, the breathing, everything that we do through the day, it has to be orderly, not chaotic. But on the other hand, one day we eat in the morning at 10 and the next day we eat in the evening at 5. One day we exercise in the morning, another day in the afternoon. 10 days we don't exercise at all. That confuses the system. But if there is a reasonably good order, at least 70 to 80% of the time, we know that we are doing pretty well with the mind and the body. And then there is that 20-30% that, what many people like to call the cheat days. But it's not actually cheating. Ayurveda is fun, yoga is fun. And it doesn't say that we should not ever be doing something. All it says is follow the path of moderation, follow the middle path, try to live your life as closely attuned as possible with nature's rhythm. You have done well for yourself.
Lovely. So if you could help us, give us some, maybe a little bit of a practice that we can do at home, because the whole idea is that, our transformers who are watching, it'll be lovely for them to take something back. So if there were a few things about Ayurveda or from Ayurveda that we can introduce into our lives, we can make it, as you say, a habit, a reflex, and it's something that we do, like we brush our teeth, or we, when we wake up in the mornings, or, a lot of us exercise. Some could add that to their programs, but a little bit of an outline on maybe 5 things that we can add into our life for building our immunity and incorporating that as a lifestyle, not just, during these times of the pandemic, but beyond.
So do you want 5 things that people would like to do, or that people will resist doing?
Well, I think right now we are in an environment where hopefully everyone has an open mind. So, and everyone really wants to derive the benefits, right, out of Ayurveda or anything that they're doing. Why would someone do something if it is not going to work for them? So, give us the hard one. Give us the ones that we may resist, but it would be a great contribution in our lives.
So the one that I like the most is waking up early in the morning.
Oh. All right. When you say early, do you mean with the cycle of the sun?
Yes. So the text will tell us at least 45 minutes before sunrise. But even if it is sunrise or around sunrise, it is fine. But waking up early in the morning is one of the best gifts that we can give ourselves, because that is the time when the mind is relatively empty, relatively clear. It is nourished well. And at that point, if we get up and we engage in our morning practices. For example, the second practice I would talk about at the physical level is daily cleansing, daily bowel movements. And I say this in all seriousness because the younger generation typically forget about the cleansing aspect. Everybody is only talking about nourishment all the time, but nobody is focusing on cleansing. And unless cleansing happens, there is no use of putting in the best nutrition into the system. It just does not work. And ideally, early morning is a great time, just as the sun removes the external impurity of darkness, we wake up and remove all our internal impurities,
But
physically
doc,
and mentally.
but doc, if you can't go to the bathroom in the morning, then what do you do?
So it's a conditioning, and you work around it. You work with it. You, where required, you seek help. But for most people, it is just a matter of conditioning, of especially at a younger age. All it requires for children is for them to be conditioned that that is the way they should begin their day. And it'll happen most easily for most people. Later on, we may need some help with herbs or food or whatever it is. But certainly that is a great practice to begin the day with, because once you are cleansed, then whatever you put into your system is received better. Today, there's a big problem with receiving. Many of us don't know how to receive anything. We don't know how to receive food. We don't know how to receive love. We don't know how to receive anything. Being the moment we receive, we want to give. It's become transactional, the whole process. So receiving unconditionally and giving unconditionally. I've moved into a different topic, but that is also very important. Exercise, everybody exercises, but again, exercise should ideally be in the first half of the day and not in the second half. When you exercise in the morning, you wake up the system, and that is good for you. Late in the evening, if we try to exercise, we are waking up the system, which means though we may temporarily sleep well due to the exhaustion of the exercise, over a period of time, it can possibly create insomnia, because exercise is about waking the system. It is not about putting the system to sleep. So if there is a third activity that I would suggest, it would be exercise in the morning, the third practice. And food, of course, is something, we all engage in different kinds of eating, emotional eating, binge eating, eating every couple of hours, following different kinds of diets. Ideally, we need to eat, at least many of us need to eat a lot less than what we normally do. I'm not talking about people at the other end of the scale, but many of us are on this extreme where we eat a lot more. We need to always have sufficient reserve capacity. When we eat, there should be some space left for the digestive processes to happen. When we exercise, we should have some reserve capacity. We should not exercise till we are ready to drop dead. There should always be some reserve capacity. In anything that we do, we should do it well within ourselves. So that is again another practice which, if we work consciously with, we will find that we can extend our capacity considerably over a period of time. Another important practice is breathing. We are not even talking about regulated breathing, but deep, slow breathing. Making it a practice to engage in deep, slow breathing for at least 5 to 10 minutes every day, if not more. Because breathing helps considerably for the body and the mind. It enables clearance of the channels. It enables nourishment to move through more easily in the body. So breathing is the fourth practice that I would recommend. And the final practice which is easy, but many of us resist, is getting a good night's sleep. At least 5 to 7 hours of sleep at night. We're not talking about sleeping during the day, but good rest is important if we want to maintain our physical and mental health. And that should be at night. It is not during the daytime. So these are some of my suggestions at the very basic level to maintain our health.
So there were two things I want to talk about in that list. One is the dietary section and guidance that you gave about eating within your means. Doc, there are so many diets out there. Like, it's confusing. You've got vegan, no dairy, but ghee, as per Ayurveda tradition, comes under that. You've got paleo, which is raw food. And, my mother keeps talking about not having raw food in Ayurveda and no salads and all of that. So it's confusing. So can you just break some of these myths for us?
Ayurveda puts it very simply: eat what you can digest, and in a quantity that you can digest. You might be eating the best food, but if the quantity is excessive, you do not digest it. And what you don't digest results in the creation of toxins within the system. So Ayurveda says, ideally eat local food, eat seasonal food. Typically, for most of us who are not physically active, cooked food is a better option than raw food. If you are on your feet for several hours a day, like in the early days, people used to work in the fields or in the forests. For them, raw food was absolutely fine because they had a great digestive capacity. If you don't have a digestive capacity, then we want to pre-process the food and make it a little easier to digest. So local food, seasonal food, easily digestible, ideally warm or hot food. Especially in these days, it is best to go with hot in everything, whether it's the food you eat, the water you drink, everything. The hotter it is, the better it is. In fact, now you don't want to be using air conditioning. Earlier everybody wanted air conditioning. Now nobody wants air conditioning. So yes, the hotter, the better. And Ayurveda also puts a very interesting factor when it talks about the different principles of diet. It gives us 7 principles. And the 7th principle is very interesting. It basically talks about the state of mind in which you prepare the food and in which you serve the food and in which you eat the food. If you are eating the food in a highly distracted way, it really does not help one to get the nourishment from the food. So it talks about a state of mind which is clear, which is pure, which is loving, which is compassionate. That state of mind contributes immensely to food being digested better. And that is again the reason why it is always better to have food at home than to be eating regularly outside.
Mm-hmm. And what about, COVID specific things that we can add to our diet, to build our immunity for these times in particular?
Well, the government of India has put out certain protocols based on Ayurveda and natural remedies. But a couple of simple things would be the drinking water. If we can put a couple of pinches of dry ginger and 4 to 5 pinches of roasted coriander seeds and boil our water and then sip that boiled water, either hot or lukewarm, through the day. That is one very simple thing that we can do during this period. We also strongly recommend using nasal drops. There's an oil, we call it Untitled in Ayurveda. or even simple sesame oil, 1 or 2 drops in each nostril every morning is a great way to clear the nasal passages and to build the resilience. Using, turmeric, ginger, garlic in our food is a great idea. Eating simple food, I am a strong proponent of khichdi in North India and kanji in the South, though many people really don't like it. But I think that is one of the best ways to look after yourself, going back to the basics.
So my mother has made a song on this, which is kanji in the morning, kanji in the evening. It is an acquired
Yes,
taste, but yes.
it's an acquired